All right, well, welcome to another edition of the Sports Guys, another packed weekend. We have a lot to cover with you guys tonight. But first, just wanted to say, I hope everyone's having a wonderful holiday season. You have a great Christmas with your families. You get some time off. Everybody needs to recharge at the end of the year. This will be our last Sports Guys episode for 2024. And it's been just an absolute epic year. I just want to thank all of you guys who've been watching every week and helping us boost our views and help us boost our subscribers. You've just been absolutely unbelievable. All the comments that roll in every week. So thank you so much from the Sports Guys. How you doing, Robbie?
Doing great. I'm running around doing the Christmas spirit thing and getting a little time to reflect. Had some time off. Got my poor man's beard going.
I like it.
Yeah, great. Best time of year, honestly.
Get the presents going, get the tree going,
Sports,
get
family, presents.
food
Yeah.
going, sports. You got football. We even have games
Yeah.
on Christmas Day this year. Doesn't get
Yep.
much better than that.
Cold wheat smoothie in your hand,
Just reflecting a little bit about, what we put together in this podcast this year. Anything that comes to mind for you? I mean, I've just been reflecting a lot this week about how much the channel's grown and just kind of blown away by what we've been able to achieve this year.
Yeah, you and I did these talks every day for the last 30 years or whatever. And when you mentioned, hey, let's just do a podcast, I said, cool, maybe we'll have 20 family members watching or something. And it's just grown beyond what I could have really envisioned, which is amazing. And I'm so thankful to everybody for tuning in and joining us on this journey and having fun with us. And hopefully you'll crossing paths with us in one way or another. But it's been a lot of fun. It's just been a lot of what we've always done in our car and bouncing ideas off each other and thoughts and different ways of talking about things we've heard or read about in the news and what we think about it. Sometimes we're dead on, sometimes we're a little off. And that's kind of how the podcast is going. It's been a lot of fun.
It's going to be a lot of fun to see kind of where this goes. We don't know where this journey's headed, and a lot of it's going to be up to you guys. You guys will kind of help us determine where it goes. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm real excited to close out the year, start a new year with you, Robbie, as the Sports Guys, and I'm sure we're going to have some epic times next year too.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So big takeaways from this incredible weekend. I mean, it was so much overload of sports. I was trying to help Deb, work on things around our house. And at the same time, we had games on all day long Saturday, all day long Sunday, college games, pro games. It was just, it was almost too much to keep up with. But any general thoughts coming out of the weekend?
Well, it's been interesting this year. The last couple of weeks, getting ready for Christmas, decorating while you're watching sports, and gift wrapping while the TV's on. You're trying to check on games, and it's been funny. It's been a different kind of Christmas so far because of our podcast is a time commitment for us that is like a labor of love. We absolutely love it. But you have to carve out some time for it, to prepare it, to plan ahead, to try to do as much research as we can into what we want to talk about. And it's been a really cool Christmas season with the podcast also. And we had an amazing year as a family, and we're just so thankful and grateful. And it's what pops out is the level of amazing sports while we're so busy trying to get ready for Christmas has been I feel like I'm on tilt.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I realized today that, you scramble to do your normal stuff. You have your job, you've got your normal things you have to do for your family. You have your normal life to run. But then I feel like we've built up this really nice following on this channel, and I almost feel a responsibility to them to make sure we keep up with the major sports activities, because they want to hear, from us about them, summarizing them, giving us our opinion on them, and helping them to dive into them. So
I never want to short them on the effort on our side where we weren't really able to prepare well enough because so much craziness is going on. So, if it's just you and me in the car, I'd want to bring to you the best information I had, and so that's kind of how I look at it. Is the same.
It's been a really fun thing adding all of you guys to our lives, because now we really take it seriously and we really want to make sure we bring you the best coverage. So that's where we stand right now. Anything on the games that really stood out for you?
Yeah. I was kind of surprised at looking at some of the pro teams. I was just revisiting their records. The pro teams are really separating, I think. There's still parity and there's still upsets, but for the most part, the bad teams are losing every week. And I think they're kind of tanking for Cam, or tanking for Shadur or whatever. And the good teams are finding ways to win, even if it's not pretty. In college, the playoff was very interesting. We had there was so much discussion about how we got the 12 teams picked. And we knew that was going to be part of the coolness of it, was the debate about it. Like, that's right up our alley right now, right? Should this team be in? Should that team be in? And then when they play them, and then you have kind of what happened, the sort of the blowouts, you kind of recalibrate and say, maybe we should go with the best way we can, picking best teams, and not so much, hey, I beat everyone on my weak schedule. And then there'll be a pendulum swing back too far that way. And then we'll question somebody, and somebody who's 12-0 that barely squeaked in might go on a long run and surprise everybody, even though they're not in a power conference. So it's the college experience this year with the super conferences and the way they picked the playoff competitors was very interesting. And I think we'll continue to evolve and tweak as it goes forward. But it was very cool to watch year number one unfold.
I do think we predicted all 4 games last week when we had Luke on. You know, Luke was 4 for 4. You were 4 for 4. I was 3 for 4. I missed the Tennessee Ohio State one. But essentially, the best game of the day, really, out of the 4 was Clemson, Texas. It was the most competitive. And those 2 teams, to me, are the closest in talent. They were the closest in ranking. Yeah. And they really state about why we really need to reseed. And I know we've beaten that to death, but this showed this weekend even more why we need to reseed.
Yeah.
It made no sense for, Clemson to play an SMU. SMU should have played, the top seed out of the first round bracket. So,
what's funny about that reseeding argument? I totally agree with it. Not only should we have seeded separately for round one, I think, Boise State should have played in round one. I think, SMU should have, which they did. Arizona State should have. All the teams that sort of were given the opportunity to go forward, even though they're not thought of as the best teams, they should be earning their way in by winning a first round.
Almost like a play-in.
Yeah, play-in game kind of. The top 4 teams should have gotten buys, not the conferences. So that's that. But then there should be a second reseed, I think, after the first round.
I agree.
I think that would be cool too. I don't know how you could do it.
And the small programs are going to complain about it, but I think for the average football fan who doesn't really have a bone to pick, they just want great games. I think that this weekend, we knew that this was the greatest college football ever. We love the 12-team playoff, but we knew going into the weekend that the seedings made it somewhat of a faulty draw. We knew that, and I think it ended up creating 3 very lopsided games and 1 good game. So
yes.
I think they've got to find a way to correct that in the future. And, the small programs, they have to earn their way in, like you said.
Yep. They've got to be in a special place as a program where they have a special team and make their run. But if you're Boise State, you're not going to be in it every year. And Arizona State, same thing. If you have that kind of a special team, you should be allowed in and make some noise, but you got to earn it. You shouldn't be getting buys.
You also notice that home field advantage in some sports doesn't play much of a role, but it plays a huge role in college football, and they really played a huge role on Saturday. All 4 home teams not only won, but won comfortably. And to sit there at Ohio State and have 110,000 Ohio State screaming fans That's very hard for Tennessee to go
I
into,
know.
even if they're a great team. Clemson to go into Austin. I mean, I thought Klubnik played really well, but for them to go into Austin and try to win, that's really tough. So Indiana looked completely deer in headlights in Notre Dame in that environment.
SMU looked lost.
SMU looked the worst of the four of them. They looked completely like they didn't belong there. And again, they were in Penn State's Happy Valley. And so we'll get all into those details here when we go into the actual games themselves. But my takeaway was seeding and reseeding has got to happen to make these games the maximum that they could have been, that we were excited about.
I also thought of something I heard today. They were talking about how they might have kind of bungled this, some of these teams too, because a lot of these teams they have to come up with a system that truly looks at the depth of your wins. Like each win is not equal. Okay. So if you're they need to seed each team in your conference. It's okay to go with the Power Four conferences, but if you beat all the Big Ten teams you played, but you played all bottom half Big Ten teams, it's not the same thing as Georgia playing all the top 5 SEC teams.
Mm-hmm.
Those wins should have more weight. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's got to be a way to give a weighting system in place for if you beat the worst team in your division, like a Purdue, or you beat a Mississippi State or something. It's not the same thing as beating an Alabama or a Texas.
Mm-hmm.
It just shouldn't be. So it should be wherever you are in your division gives that much power weight to it.
You remember we showed
each win.
We showed the graphic last week in our broadcast of the strength of schedule in the power conference. And I think that, a team like Alabama, if they went by that, would have gotten in. And so they need to look back at that next year. They need to really take a look at, are we allowing the top 12 teams in? I think you need to go back towards that and you'll have better games.
Well, last year they swung towards the best teams. This year they swung towards the most deserving. And then I think they'll swing back more towards the best teams again. They'll just look at it until they get it right, I think.
Although, don't you think it was foreseeable that the first round games were not going to be as good as the second round games? I think that was foreseeable.
Well, yeah, except second round games. You think Boise State and Arizona State are going to put up a big fight? Maybe. But there's a higher likelihood of seeing more of these games. So
well, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon. I mean, those are going to be just all 4 of those teams could win the whole thing.
Ohio State, Oregon is going to be epic.
Yeah, Georgia, Notre Dame is going to be epic, I think.
And Georgia, really Notre Dame
teams.
is
good defenses, good running teams, good quarterbacks. Maybe not the best, but.
So at the end of the day, the idea of the 12-team playoff is pretty great. I think the way they assembled the teams needs to be looked at and tweaked a little. There's no question that there are some problems in college football right now that need to be resolved. We've talked about them. First and foremost, the transfer portal opening. I know that it's geared towards the academic calendar. They have to have some kind of exceptions in place.
The one thing
where you can quickly transfer after the bowl is over.
The one thing I really do like is that the home team reward of being a higher seed, because that makes the regular season more important. I think what makes college football special is the regular season is super important. And so these teams are going to want to try to get higher seeds by winning more games because they know that home field advantage is so huge in the playoff.
Which is concerning because that means we've heard Alabama talking about how they need to weaken their schedule to make it easier to get wins.
Yeah.
So I think they need to do the power ranking victories.
Although they say that, but they're going to have 8 SEC games. I don't know how you weaken those.
Yeah, no.
They're going to be playing South Carolina.
It's going to be non-conference. It's going to be non-conference games.
Yeah, we don't want that.
But let's face it, if you're in the SEC and you're playing Vanderbilt, Mississippi State,
Missouri,
a couple of the lower ones,
you
have an advantage than if you have to go from Georgia to Texas to Alabama to Auburn to Florida to South Carolina. I mean,
It's still murderer's row. I mean, even playing Vanderbilt anymore, you just never know.
In fact, South Carolina probably would be in it if it weren't for their schedule. So
right. They were good enough
the same thing with Florida too.
Yeah, if South Carolina was in this bracket, they would have put up a better fight than some of the first-round teams, I think.
No question.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at the material. So this is our final weekend update of the year. This is our CFB playoffs first round edition. You see the beautiful Christmas tree there at the top, give you some holiday spirit. Some of the big headlines coming out of this weekend: college football playoff winners and losers, home teams make it look easy. And so that goes, Rob, to that whole home field advantage thing. And you see the picture there of Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Penn State, the four winners. I think the kid that stood out to me the most the entire weekend was that kid there from Penn State. You had been speaking about him the last couple of weeks, but I had no idea how dominant this tight end was. This guy Ward. Mm-hmm. He looks like Brock Bowers. I mean,
I told you he's the next Brock Bowers.
The guy's unbelievable, and the way he blocks. I mean, he was pancaking people. He's a tight end pancaking people. I mean, he's so ready for the pros. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Anyway, he could help a team next year immediately.
Any more thoughts about this home field advantage? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's going to lessen the number of upsets we get in the playoff?
I like the home field advantage. I just think the matchups weren't very good.
Okay.
They felt good going in, but
gotcha.
The big boys just took care of the little guys. They took them behind the woodshed.
Right. That makes sense. Well, the next headline here is the four teams that didn't play this past weekend that are all had byes, and that was Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State, all with byes and all sitting there waiting on their next opponent. What do you think about these four teams? Who do you think of these are going to advance, and who do you think these might be going home?
Well, all four had amazing seasons for their programs. It was interesting how they built the playoff seeding. I love how Boise State can run and decent defense. I don't think they can match up all the way, but if Genty goes crazy, you just never know. He can put a lot of pressure on a defense. Arizona State's probably the hottest team in the playoff, and they have Scadaboo, who I've been watching all year and just been amazed by. I don't think they have enough talent on the roster to compete at the highest level.
Mm-hmm.
And then Oregon, I think, is probably going to win it all. They have the least weaknesses, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think Oregon and Georgia are probably the best two of the four that stayed home this weekend.
Yeah.
No question. I think Boise State and Arizona State are on their way home. I think Texas will take care of Arizona State. I think they're just too solid a roster. And I think Boise State's going to get dispatched as well. Oregon probably has the toughest game again in the second round with Ohio State.
No question.
A really tough game. I think Georgia and Notre Dame's going to also be a really epic game. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them wins that one. So I really believe the second round matches are really going to be epic. I'm really excited about it. First round matchups, I think, other than Texas, Clemson, were kind of disappointing from a competitive standpoint. Still really fun to watch. I really enjoyed them, but not quite the games that a lot of us were hoping for. So let's dive into that. The first game, which was Friday night, this was Indiana Notre Dame, 27-17, which is completely misleading. Indiana scores 2 touchdowns in the final 2 minutes with third stringer Notre Damers in. You see Curtis Rourke's final numbers look good, but they really weren't if you really watch the game. He came in at 20 for 33, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns with a pick, only because he scored those 2 touchdowns at the end. But largely, most of the day, he just looked completely deer in the headlights. He was totally overwhelmed. Couldn't barely get a pass off, was sacked multiple times, and was just completely off his game from the very beginning. Whereas Notre Dame's Riley Leonard has similar numbers, although he was a lot more efficient, also ran the ball pretty well, executed the offense. Notre Dame on defense and offense just looked a lot more ready for this game, I guess you could say. Rushing, you had Notre Dame's Jeremiah Love, who had the big 98-yard run, which kind of opened up the scoring and really gave Indiana feeling for what they were in for tonight. And then on the receiving side, it was kind of even on both sides. Any overall thoughts about breaking down the stats for this game?
I think Jeremiah Love's 98-yard touchdown run was a backbreaker and sort of showed some of the talent level that Notre Dame had that Indiana didn't have, that kind of playmaker. The score was relatively close, but you could feel there was a disparity in talent and depth as well, not just talent, but I think Riley Leonard was clearly working with more toys and more tools
No question.
on his side. He didn't have a spectacular game, but it was a good game. But I think Jeremiah Love was the difference in the game, and also the Notre Dame defense. They had 3 sacks and a pick. They just put a lot of pressure on Rourke.
And, they kept flipping back and forth. I don't know if it was appropriate, but flipping back and forth between the looks on Rourke's face and the looks on his coach's face. They just kept going back and forth, and both of them looked really concerned the whole game. Couldn't get anything going. They just looked exasperated, lots of hands on hips. Nothing was working. Even little screen passes were getting blown up in the backfield. What were your thoughts about that? It really felt like the cameras were really focusing on those two and how exasperated they were the whole day.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana scored at the end. They were pretty much getting manhandled almost the whole game, and then the Notre Dame backups went in and gave up some points. But for the most part, there was an exasperation that you could just feel, and they were trying to illustrate it with the camera work in showing that. I think there was a really telling moment when defender for Indiana took a shot at Riley Leonard going out of bounds. And that's very uncharacteristic for Cignetti and his programs. And it showed a frustration that it built up. It's not that it was a dirty hit. It just, you're running all this way. You're starting to lose dramatically.
This is
you get there, the
really proud team.
Quarterback's ducking out of bounds, and you go on and shove him. And then you probably want to take it back immediately.
We've been
but it kind of was an illustration of what was going on that day.
They were so passionate, and they were very frustrated, like you said. I think Cignetti, there were so many things we said all year about how much we loved him as a coach, but there's a double-edged sword there, because when you get a passionate coach, you also can get some of the negative aspects of that. And I know that he was getting absolutely torn apart after the game for kind of some of his little outbursts he had during the game. He was very exasperated.
Yeah, and it wasn't just in that game. It was his comments. He said a lot of things that sort of came back to bite him. All I do is win. This program is built, for the long haul. All we do is we don't just beat top 25 teams, we annihilate them. And some of that stuff wasn't that founded in facts. It was kind of bravado. It was unnecessary bravado. I saw more out of him this year. Sort of as the season went on, he started to say more things that were uncharacteristic, I think. Because I'm very impressed by him as a coach.
Was it that?
But I felt like he was trying to put pressure on the media to elevate their narrative a little bit, and I think it was kind of backfiring.
I think he was doing it to position them to make sure they got in the playoff and it wasn't Alabama. I really think he was positioning themselves, to make sure Indiana got in, because they were kind of on that edge.
To me, that last comment he had about we don't just beat top 25 teams, we annihilate them. To me, that was way over the line. Like, I think that is sending a signal of bulletin board material kind of thing. And I just felt like he kind of hurt his team just a little bit with a few of those comments. But for the most part, he got his team really ready to play every week. They did annihilate a lot of teams. They weren't top 25 teams, but they were good teams, and his team looked great. He had Rourke. There were times when Rourke was hurt for a few weeks. They still won. They did well. I think they just ran into a big, strong, fast team with guys like Jeremiah Love who are NFL bound. And they just got kind of whipsawed a little bit. And they did have fight all the way through. I mean, the fact that they could fight and score at the end to make it look closer was pretty indicative of a team you would think that has a lot of heart. But for the most part, it wasn't pretty.
So he got absolutely just destroyed online, obviously, in all the social media. But so did Indiana. There was a lot of people talking about, see, I told you they didn't belong. They should never have been going to play, all that. You think that's founded, or is it pretty solid that Indiana deserved to get in and all that stuff?
I think if you had a program, a system that is built on gauging the power level of each win and basing it on that, you wouldn't have Indiana go in there so easily. Like, they would have had to have done something maybe a little more special, like maybe beat Ohio State or lose to them by just a few points or something. They got kind of manhandled in the one game against a really good opponent this year. So I don't know.
Okay, that's good.
The selection system needs tweaking.
Another guy really impressed me on Notre Dame was this guy, Faison, the wide receiver. 7 catches for 89 yards. He really impressed me a lot, and I think he moved up some draft boards. So they were just so much better in talent on both sides of the ball. Their defense, I've never seen more plays where a defense was in the backfield. I mean, every time Indiana was trying to do something, they were getting hit 2 or 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It was crazy.
And it was pretty incredible because Notre Dame had freshman kids making huge plays that were dominant. And I remember thinking, this defense is going to be good for a long time.
It really felt like about every other play, they knew what play was coming. Like, that's literally how it looked. They blew everything up.
Maybe.
It was crazy. I was very impressed. Moving on to the next game, another complete wipeout. Probably the most deer in the headlights I've seen out of the 4 games was Kevin Jennings for SMU. His first 2 drives ended in pick sixes. Penn State's defense was just absolutely on fire. And Drew Allard played really well, really solid and efficient. The running game for Penn State was just off the chain. They had 2 guys who almost got 100 yards each. Lots of touchdowns on the ground. But it mainly was just their defense. They just dominated from beginning to end on defense. I was actually surprised SMU even scored. That's how bad the first half was. What were your thoughts on this game?
Penn State defense was the star of the show. 2 pick sixes for touchdowns. And also running the ball just down their throat. SMU had no answers. They couldn't move the ball, and they had they got more and more into a position where they're having to throw, and the wheels came off. Penn State just got them handled.
You notice the whole year SMU had a really balanced offense. They were able to run the ball against everybody. This was the first team that really could stop them.
That's right.
And it just basically put everything onto Kevin Jennings' shoulders, and he just wasn't ready for it. He just was very unprepared for the moment. And again,
do you know Kevin Jennings' rushing stats?
No.
8 rushes for negative 25 yards.
Wow.
And that's not sacks. That's attempted rushes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing. This was the same performance as Notre Dame. Penn State was in the backfield the entire day. Every time SMU was trying to do something tricky, like a reverse or a toss sweep or a trap play or anything, Penn State was meeting them in the backfield. And it was just so impressive. Looked to me like SMU's offensive line was getting whipped on almost every play. So not really a contest, unfortunately. I was thinking this would be a better game. Does this, for you, kind of highlight the fact that Penn State should be taken seriously in this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I like their defense a lot, and I think they have a tandem of running backs that are real powerful, but I think they can't move the ball through the air well enough against the good defenses. I think they're going to struggle.
So you think everyone's going to go 8-9 in the box and just shut them down?
I would.
Yeah.
I'd put it all on Drew Allard and just
I could see that.
Make him have a lot of pressure on him. Make sure just run blitz constantly.
I think their defense will keep them in a lot of games. I think they'll probably end up having a real low scoring kind of game, but I agree with you. I think they'll get knocked out. I do think they'll win this next game against Boise, though.
Yeah, I think so too.
We'll talk about that. But yeah, another wipeout, unfortunately, on this one. Next game was the best game of the day. This was Texas Clemson. I thought that Cade Klubnik played really, really well, 336 yards passing with 3 TDs and an interception with an 81 QBR. Quinn Ewers had probably his best, most efficient day in about 8 weeks with 202 yards, a touchdown, and 87 QBR. They also, on Texas's side, had 2 guys go over 100 yards and have just monster days, 2 touchdowns each.
Yep.
For Blue and Wisner. This kid Wisner was just unbelievable. He was breaking tackles all over the place. They had some nice passing too, but for the most part, they were mostly rushing. And then Clemson was mostly receiving. They had this kid Moore that really had a breakout game. This was a solid game. I never really, though, thought Texas was threatened. I always thought Texas was going to win this game and that they were the better team. Any thoughts on this one?
Well, I think you really touched on most of it. Klubnik had a really nice game. I don't think he could overcome Texas's defense as much as Texas could overcome Clemson's weaker defense. I believe Texas has one of the top 3 or 4 defenses in the country without a lot of dominating stars. They're just a really good unit. And so Clemson had its hands full, but that tells you how good Cade Klubnik is.
But you do
He's a really solid quarterback.
You do realize Texas's running game was basically shut down most of the season.
Yeah.
They have not been running the ball well. And so for
that
them
was
to
really
lose,
my next point. The 2 running backs going crazy like that. Quintravian Wisner had 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Jaden Blue had 146 yards and 2 touchdowns. They were kind of unstoppable. And so it took a lot of pressure off Ewers. I think the whole goal was to keep Ewers from hurting the team and having him help wherever he could, and then letting the Texas defense do what it does. And so that was a good game plan. It was a good matchup, but because Clemson has athletes, but Texas is a superior team, would win probably 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10.
I think we all 3 picked Texas to win this game largely because of Clemson's defense, and I think that's exactly what happened. Clemson's offense is fine. Clemson's defense was almost embarrassing. It was almost the worst defense in all the 4 games. I mean, they really was just Swiss cheese to Texas's running game. So I'm not sure what happened there. I would have thought that they would have tried to scheme it up a little bit more, but they were just overmatched.
The rushing yardage, Texas ran it 48 times for 292 yards on the ground. And Clemson ran it 24 times, so half as many times for 76 yards. So they just didn't have the results on the ground. But throwing was a little different. Clemson led with 336, and Texas had 202. So clearly throwing was the strength for Klubnik, but they just couldn't quite hang. It was too much. They just ran it down their throat.
I thought Klubnik had about as good a game as you could ask him to have. I really felt he played
great.
What
he could.
He just doesn't have as good a team. It's as simple as that. So
he's shown me a lot throughout this year. He's risen up my board quite a bit in terms of NFL caliber.
I agree. I do think he should come back for one more year. That's what I would advise him to do. I think he'll be one of the top guys come out next year. We'll see what he decides to do. But this was a really solid game. I really enjoyed watching this one. There's 2 really good teams. Texas being a little bit better. Yeah. Next one was Ohio State, Tennessee, another complete blowout. This one was surprising to me. Obviously, I picked Tennessee to upset Ohio State by 3 points. That did not happen. Nico had 104 yards passing and just looked completely flustered the entire game. He was really, really bothered by the Ohio State pressure that was coming from all directions. They did have a lot of rushing yards, Tennessee, and even so, Nico had 2 rushing touchdowns himself, which was kind of interesting. But for the most part, he was very ineffective most of the day. Whereas Will Howard, who we had been really critical of, had, I thought, his best game of the season with 311 yards, 2 touchdowns. And obviously, the Ohio State also got rushing going. They had multiple guys with really nice rushing games, and their receiving, they had finally got it to the 2 guys who are going to both go pro, and that's Smith and Aguka. And really good to see that they finally opened up their passing game a little bit. I think Ohio State really kind of alerted the world that they're in this tournament to win it. That's the way I felt about it. Thoughts?
Yeah, this to me was the least surprising result, because I think Tennessee's offensive prowess only resides in Dylan Sampson, really. I'm not a believer in I'm Aliva. And Dylan Sampson was injured. He was nursing a hamstring. He only ran the ball 2 times. He got 6 yards.
2 times for 6 yards, yeah.
He couldn't do it. And so that was their only chance on offense, was to hold the ball and just have long drives, try to wear Ohio State down. Without that, they had no chance. And I really like Tennessee's defense, but I just don't think it can hold up to all the NFL talent that's running around. The NFL talent that's running around on Ohio State is impressive. And in fact, I saw today Kirk Herbstreit said the number one pick coming out of this draft, number one pick is Jeremiah Smith.
Mm-hmm.
He's the best receiver. He's the best player in college football.
He's
according
incredible.
to Herbstreit.
He's absolutely
and I
incredible.
think he might be right. He's definitely in the top 3. And he had 103 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's absolutely unbelievable. He's huge, but he runs quickly. He's a very fast receiver for his size. He has incredible hands, and he never drops the ball. He's Randy Moss. I mean,
he keeps making one-handed catches like Odell Beckham. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. This kid. And
he reminds me of Randy Moss.
He's a freshman, Rob.
I know.
He's a freshman. Yeah, it's amazing. I just think Ohio State have way too much talent. Why in the world I picked Tennessee to win this game? I'll never know.
I'm not even sure they're that great a team. They're just an incredible assembly of talent.
That's right. That's right. You know, I think even if Dylan Sampson had 25 carries for 150 yards, I don't think it would have made a difference. I think Ohio State.
I think this would have been closer because it would have kept Tennessee off the field defensively, some more than this. So I don't think Ohio State would have had 42. They would have had 34. I'm not sure Tennessee's score would have been any different, but maybe they would have gotten an extra field goal. I mean, it would have been a little closer is all I'm saying. At no point do I think Tennessee lines up and beats Ohio State. That's why I was so sure of this one. In no way did I see this an upset. I really didn't see an upset anywhere, but if there was going to be an upset, I thought it might be Clemson, Texas, because Clemson has athletes.
One of the reasons I thought this might be closer is obviously with Sampson, but also just Big Ten versus SEC. Whereas in the matchups where it was Big Ten versus ACC or SEC versus Big 12, I just felt like those were mismatches from a talent perspective.
Yeah.
I felt like Tennessee might be slightly less in talent, but had enough, especially on defense, to hang in this game. But
there weren't any big SEC offensive games this year where Dylan Sampson didn't have a huge day. So
if you watch Nico in this game, I mean, he completes 14 passes and runs 20 times. He just didn't quite look ready for prime time, and I think he's going to get better. I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks next year. But he wasn't ready.
I'm not sure if he has a much higher ceiling than what you're seeing. I don't know. Maybe he'll have to get a lot of work done on his throwing.
He did not look like he was ready for this game. He really was totally out of his league.
But I don't think. I mean, he's had a lot of games this year like that. I have not been impressed with him this year. I know some people are, but I don't think he's not ready for this level yet, and maybe he might not ever be. He may never be good enough. He might be DJU part 2 or something.
I think going into next year, there's not going to be an excuse. He's going to go through a whole nother offseason and all the offseason workouts, and then into the SEC season. We'll see. We'll see if he can get it together. But Ohio State, clearly the better team, moves on and really states that they're here to win the whole thing. So we'll see what happens. This is what the next games look like. Second round. These are, I think, going to be even better games. This one might not be a good game in the second half. I think first half, Boise will keep it close. Penn State, Boise State, quarterfinal at the Fiesta Bowl. What are your thoughts about this game?
Well, Penn State should win this. I will say Boise State's running game is pretty potent. Could cause problems for Penn State, but I think the overall quality of the rosters is a mismatch. So Penn State should take care of it.
Ashton Genty needs to have the game of his life.
Yeah.
To
And the
give them,
offensive line for him needs to block like crazy.
because he's going to get 9 in the box. So
Yeah.
he's going to have to really, and he can do it. I mean, you know how good he is. So
I think Madsen has had some really nice games this year and could surprise some people. If they go 9 men in a box, it could come down to Madsen's throwing. And it's possible that he creates some problems.
True.
But
Next
I
game
think
is
the likelihood is that Penn State wins it relatively easily.
right. Agreed. I got Penn State in that one. I think probably by at least 10. So we got next one is a 1:00 game, Texas, Arizona State on Saturday. This is the Peach Bowl. You've got Arizona State is technically the home team in this one in Atlanta. What do you thought about this one, Texas, Arizona State?
Arizona State's hot team and can pound the ball on the ground. I like their team chemistry. I think they play really well together as a unit, offensively and defensively. Feel good about the way they complement each other with the different phases. But I think Texas is starting to take it up a notch and do a little better. They're not asking Ewers to do too much. They know that their defense is the strength of the team. They also know they need to run the ball more to take pressure off Ewers, and they're doing that now. So they're going to overpower Arizona State most likely.
This would be a pretty clear upset. I think this and Boise both would be a clear upset. I think Arizona State, just like Boise, will keep it close for a half, and then I think Texas will take over. I think that big offensive line will wear on them, and they'll find a way to stop the Arizona State running game, and then I think it'll be over at that point. We'll see. I'm hoping these will be really good games. We'll find out. Next one I've got Ohio State, Oregon. This is a 5:00 game on Saturday. This is in the Rose Bowl. This is the dream Rose Bowl that college football wanted. Ohio State is technically the visiting team. Oregon is the home team in this one. So what are your thoughts about this matchup that everybody wanted?
This is the game of the playoffs, really, until you get to the finals, I think. Ohio State's loaded with NFL talent. They've had a lot of injuries, but they've overcome them and learned how to win different ways. They can beat you throwing or running the ball. They've got standouts everywhere. This is just such a loaded team. I think their chemistry is still a work in progress, but it's the NIL team just got built with throwing money at it. And then Oregon, it's kind of the same thing. Just no weaknesses. Maybe not quite as many NFL stars, but pretty close. And they might have better team chemistry. So I've picked Oregon to win this one, but this is the game to watch. The winner of this game should take care of the national championship.
I agree with that. I think the winner of this game will win the whole thing. I completely agree. I do believe Oregon has real quarterback play, whereas Tennessee did not. Nico was just not ready for the moment. I think Dylan is definitely not only ready, but one of the best quarterbacks in football this year. I think Oregon may be able to do a little shock and awe on Ohio State. They're not totally ready for what Oregon's going to bring to them, although they have already played one time this year. So Ohio State won't be completely shocked at Oregon's speed, but they're not going to face another team like this who has this many receivers and has a quarterback who's this efficient. So I kind of look at this game as Oregon's passing game against Ohio State's running game, and which one shows out is going to be the one who wins. Thoughts on that?
I think Oregon can beat Ohio State in more ways because I think their defense can hold up and also could potentially score because I think they could fluster Will Howard. I just think they're a slightly better team, but not by a lot. So if Ohio State plays well and Oregon doesn't, then clearly Ohio State takes that game. But
wouldn't you just do a steady dose of running the whole day if you're Ohio State? Just keep the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands. I mean, that's what I would do. Just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. Run it 40 times with those two backs. That'd be my plan.
They're 13-0 for a reason.
I like Oregon 41-38. I think it's going to be a really epic game, and I'm really looking forward to it. Be a lot of fun. Next game is the night game on Saturday. This is Notre Dame, Georgia. Georgia is the home team in this one in the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. I think this will also be an epic matchup of two heavyweights. What's your thought here?
Well, Notre Dame took some injuries in this last game. So they lost a few key pieces. And Georgia's coming in pretty healthy and definitely enjoyed the bye week. So I think the advantage goes to Georgia. It seems like Georgia is chomping at the bit to prove that hard schedule that they played is the only reason why they had a couple losses. They had the best resume. They were loaded. They're defending champs, and they play with pride that, you got to go through the champs if you want to win it. So I think Notre Dame being a little banged up is going to hurt them. And I don't know that it would make all the difference in the world. I think Georgia would have beaten them anyway. But I think Georgia takes care of Notre Dame.
I had Notre Dame winning this game in our bracket from last week. I agree with you. Some of the injuries that they took in this last game are very concerning to me. I still think the health of Carson Beck is a question. Apparently, he's still kind of hobbling around. He was in a boot part of this past week. So I don't know. I'm not sure. You say Georgia's really healthy. I agree. Overall, they are, but their quarterback is not. So
they might be in better shape if they go with the backup.
That's actually true. I agree with that. So maybe if that backup has been playing with the first team this week in practice, it might really help them. So we'll see what happens. I still like this to be a really great game, down to a field goal. Who's going to win it? I don't know. I picked Notre Dame, and I guess I'm sticking with it. But will I be shocked if Georgia advances? Absolutely not. Obviously, a great team. So really, really excited about this one. Ohio State, Oregon is the marquee game of the day, but I think Notre Dame, Georgia is a close number 2.
Yeah, I agree with that. Those are the two that really should be good games.
And then Penn State, Boise State, a real nice Friday night game for everyone to lead the weekend off with. Be fun. Looking forward to it. So here's what the bracket looks like now after the weekend games we just talked about. And you can see the semifinals are waiting. You had Georgia, Penn State. I had Notre Dame, Penn State. You had Ohio State and Texas, and so did I. I'm sorry, no, you had Oregon and Texas, and so did I. So, and then we both had Oregon winning the whole thing. So we'll just have to see what happens. You think at this point they should be reseeded, is what you're saying?
I just think the most important thing was the original 12 needed to be seeded differently. That's the most important thing.
Because you notice that it's kind of reseeded already, just naturally. You've got
kind of,
Oregon,
but I mean,
8.
The fact that Boise State and Arizona State got buys is head scratching.
Yeah, we beat that up last week for sure.
Yep.
Going to be a great bracket. I'm looking forward to it. All right, so let's look at some of the other bowls that happened this past week. Memphis had a real solid game against West Virginia. This was actually a really fun game to watch. There was a lot of scoring up and down the field, lots of passing, lots of long runs. Memphis comes away with a victory in the Frisco Bowl. So that was a fun one there. You've got California played UNLV. UNLV was one of the teams you and I were watching the whole year. They were kind of sitting there trying to get the number 12 seed in the playoff. Didn't quite get it because they lost to Boise, but ended up winning this game against an ACC team, 24-13.
Cal had a nice season going, and they just kind of dropped a few there at the end.
They did. Yeah, they really did. I was surprised. They lost their last 3. So interesting. JMU comes away with a win in the Boca Raton Bowl against Western Kentucky. This was 2 really solid teams that both had really good seasons. JMU ends up winning that one.
It's pretty impressive that JMU can hold it all together, losing Signetti and 24 of their players to the transfer portal, and they just kind of reloaded and had a pretty nice season anyway. So
what do you make of that? What do you make of the fact that they've been able to get back to 9-4 again? I mean, it's really.
I think Signetti built a winning culture and left, and the culture's still in place a bit, you know?
Yeah. This was impressive. I agree. For their return year.
Yep.
Sam Houston beats Georgia Southern 31-26 in a shootout. I watched a little bit of the second half of that game. That was a pretty fun game. It was back and forth, answering each other. Ohio, the Bobcats win against Jacksonville State in the Staff DNA Cure Bowl. I've never heard of it, but real solid win there. You had Florida take on Tulane. Tulane kind of collapsed down the stretch, but they had a real nice season. But they got
I checked in on this game. That was an interesting one.
They got completely swamped, and this was another
Annihilated.
obvious example of the SEC is way better than a conference that Tulane's in.
Listen to some of these stats. First downs, Florida had 26, Tulane had 11.
Yeah.
Florida had 529 yards, and Tulane had 194. Crazy.
Unbelievable.
Time of possession 38-21. And the Florida kicker, his name is Trey Smack, Smack. That's pretty cool. Trey Smack.
You know, there's a couple teams.
He was 4 for 4 on field goals and 3 for 3 on extra points.
Oh, wow.
Perfect kicking. You know, yeah, they clubbed him.
There's a couple teams in the SEC that you didn't want to play at the end of the year that just had bad starts. You know, one of them was Florida. Another one was Ole Miss. And another one, obviously, South Carolina. Probably out of the three, South Carolina being the toughest out. So it really shows you've got to have a good start if you're going to make the playoff. You can't lose 3 quick games at the beginning of the year.
Also, it really mattered what your schedule was because South Carolina and Florida's schedules were really hard.
I know.
If they had easier schedules, they'd probably be in the playoff.
South Carolina's sitting there at 3-3, and then they go on a run. They win their last 6 games. You know, it's like nobody would want to play them.
No.
Yeah. No. So some of the games that are coming up this week, for all you guys who are looking for bowl games to watch, there's nothing but bowl games every single day. It's really exciting. Oklahoma's taking on Navy. That should be a pretty good game, I think. You've got Syracuse and Washington State. Both had really good seasons. Both have really good quarterback play. If you want to watch the Holiday Bowl. You've got Georgia Tech taking on Vanderbilt. These are two kind of the bottom of both of their conferences, but both have had pretty good years. You know,
they have great seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. They have some capability in the Birmingham Bowl. You've got USC, Texas A&M. That'll be a really good game. That's the night game on ESPN Friday night. So I'm kind of looking forward to checking in on that one. You have Iowa State, Luke's team, playing Miami. The question is this week, and he still hasn't answered it, is Cam Ward playing or not? Apparently he's thinking about it. So I'm not sure what that means, but they're waiting to announce. Maybe they're just playing some games. Who knows? That's the Pop-Tarts Bowl on Saturday. You have NC State, your team, Mr. Robbie, playing East Carolina in the Go Bowling Military Bowl.
Yep.
So that'll be an interesting one on Saturday. BYU, Colorado. These two teams are in the same conference, so I think that makes it really exciting. This could be a real slug-it-out game. In the Alamo Bowl, both had really good seasons. Both of them were actually trying to win that conference. You have South Carolina, Illinois, both with really good quarterbacks and really good coaching and teams this year. 2 9-3 teams matching up there. I like that Citrus Bowl. Alabama, Michigan may be the game.
That's the one I'm looking forward to the most.
The weekend. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that to see if Michigan can hold down this really prolific offense. I personally don't think so. I think this may be a blowout if Alabama gets rolling, but we'll see. Michigan has a really solid defense. We'll see what happens. And then Baylor, LSU winds up the bowl season. So any of these you're really looking forward to other than Alabama, Michigan?
I think that the Alabama one is the best one that I'm looking forward to the most, but East Carolina, NC State's gonna be interesting for us. USC, Texas A&M, Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt. Those are all pretty good matchup games, and I'd love to see Navy take it against Oklahoma, but I don't know if they have enough.
I think the team I'm the most looking forward to, other than Alabama, Michigan, would be BYU, Colorado, just because Colorado has these unique stars that we're not going to see again. They're both graduating. And you have,
And I have to admit, if Cam Ward does play, Iowa
yes,
State, Miami would
I
be
think
really
that's
sweet.
going to be a really excellent game, Iowa State, Miami. So that'd be my third
Yeah.
one that I'm really anticipating. So I don't know.
Honestly, each one of these games has a pretty compelling storyline.
If you think about it, this is a pretty good slate of bowl games when these people are not
Yeah.
in the playoff. I really feel like this is not a bad slate. We're going to have a fun weekend.
This could be an NIT.
Could be
right
an
here.
idea. It could be. You're right. So let's switch over to the NFL and take a look. We got Broncos Chargers on Thursday Night Football. This is a really incredible game. This was totally a game of two halves. You had Bo Nix and the Broncos just rolling it up in the first half, really looking like they were going on to their 10th victory of the season and very much in good position for the playoffs. And then something happened in the second half where the Chargers defense woke up and their running game woke up, and Herbert was passing all over the place, and
Herbert woke up.
Yeah, and they took this game away from the Broncos. It was really wild to watch. So any thoughts on this one?
I think Harbaugh willed his team to win this one with all the quirky play calling and with the fair catch thing. He's just an interesting cat. He wins strange ways sometimes. Herbert came alive. He played great. And I don't know. I think if you analyze the stats in this game, they were almost identical across the board.
Yeah.
It just came down to just a couple of plays that made the difference.
It felt like a really good game between two playoff teams, and it felt
Yeah.
like the Chargers just came on in the second half and didn't want to give this one up. They're in a more desperate situation than the Broncos were.
Mhm.
But really, at the same time, the Broncos couldn't afford to drop this one either. So it's one of those games of two teams that are really pushing to try to get in the playoffs.
The Chargers D just really, really held in the second half, and the Broncos D kind of didn't.
I would say also the Chargers, they have all the talent on defense that sometimes shows up, sometimes doesn't. But this year they've been a really low-scoring defense, and they really made Bo Nix look like a rookie in the second half. He really did not get much done. He's very ineffective. So defense turned it up, and the rest of the team turned it up, and that was it. Lights out.
And I think there was a symbolic play, the fair catch play. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, the special kick.
Towards the end of the first half, the kicker kicked it off, and the Charger fair caught it, but he was interfered with. So it was a 15-yard penalty. And there's an old rule that you can try to kick a field goal without a placeholder, without a holder. And they did that. And it was the first time in 48 years.
You essentially kick it like a kickoff.
Yarder.
Yeah, you essentially kick it like a kickoff off a tee
through
the field goal for 3 points.
And it was a 57-yard field goal off a tee. And it was the first time in 48 years because it sort of has that loophole where you have to kick it from where you fair catch it. However, because of that 15-yard penalty, it gave them good enough field position to take a shot. So Dicker hit that 57-yarder, and that gave them 3 points right before half, and it kind of closed the gap to where I think the momentum swung slightly back towards the Chargers, and then they came out and it allowed them to establish more on top of that momentum. So I think that was one of those coaching moments where Harbaugh made a good decision, put his team in a position to swing the momentum going into halftime a little bit, and got enough out of that to propel him into a good second half.
That's a really good call because it was 21-10, about to be 21-10. Then all of a sudden it was 21-13 and one.
Yeah, now it's 8 points, which is one score difference. You don't feel as sure about it at halftime if you're the Broncos. So I think that was really good coaching.
That's a really good call out, Robbie. I think that, a play that hadn't happened in 44 years. By the way, that play comes from rugby. That's a rugby rule that's left into the rule book. Yeah. So it's kind of cool to see a rugby play in NFL football. But I think overall,
I loved it because I used to be a kicker on my rugby team.
That's right. I think overall, Sean Payton's got to be kind of a little upset at how they closed this game because they really needed this one in the playoff chase and allowed the Chargers to come back and
Football is
grab
a
it.
strange game that really has a momentum factor that you have to understand. And I can't remember which famous coach said it, but the best coaches are the ones who can maximize momentum to their advantage for as long as possible, and
That's
then
right.
minimize the other team's momentum whenever they start to get some. So the best coaches make the momentum thing a real factor in to their advantage. And I think this was a perfect example of he wanted to close that momentum and go in closer to even at half. And then they came out at halftime and took control. So
Good
that was
call.
good coaching for Harbaugh.
Next game, Chiefs won relatively comfortably, 27-19. Actually, Mahomes was playing on a high ankle sprain. A lot of people weren't sure he was going to play at all. He not only played, but had a really solid game, one of his best of the year, and also ran several times for long first downs on his hobbled leg, which a lot of people were surprised about. Even though it was 27-19, one-score game, it really just felt like Chiefs had this game in control the entire game, and that Texans were a little bit over their skis in this one. What were your thoughts?
Well, obviously they were going to be as careful with Mahomes as they could, trying to make sure he gets healthier. And high ankle sprain is a slow heal. Texans have a good record this year and have some talented players. I think they've taken a tiny step backwards, but they're still a really good team.
I think they've regressed a little. There's
Just
no
a
doubt.
tiny bit. But
Yeah.
I was impressed. Mahomes had 33 yards rushing on a high ankle
Right.
sprain. I
I
think
know.
that's a lot.
I know. It was amazing. He had a
That's a
couple of
lot
really
for a
good
high
runs.
ankle sprain running quarterback who's
Mhm.
really just trying to get through the game
Mhm.
with a win. Like, you'll take a win by 1 point.
Mhm.
And then Worthy had a nice game.
Yeah, he had a couple nice throws to Worthy that really kind of
Yeah.
solidified some of those
And
drives.
the defense came up big again. 2 interceptions and 2 sacks.
Mhm.
Chiefs D kind of got it done. So,
And by the way, that was
it-
playing without Chris Jones. So, I mean, they had a real
right.
nice game without him. So,
That's
yeah.
right. It was a
Mhm.
good team effort. And Mahomes survived it and didn't really re-aggravate. At least they're not reporting that. So the line was 3.5, and they won by 8. So
We
they
have several teams that are going to make the playoffs that just feel and smell like one and dones. And I think the Texans just feel like a one and done, don't they?
I agree.
They're good. They're kind of marginal playoff team, but not going to make any noise, in my opinion. So, next game was really an epic and surprising game to me. I thought it'd come down to a field goal. I wasn't really sure who was going to win it. I didn't think the Ravens would beat up the Steelers like they did and make the Steelers defense really look pretty hapless all day. Just cut them up like Swiss cheese on the running game. I mean, Derrick Henry had one of his best games ever. And Lamar Jackson really, really played great. His numbers this year are really incredible. And to think about, they're saying he's not even in the MVP chase. I just disagree with that. I think he's in the top 3 right now. Any thoughts about this game? And was this surprising to you at all that they doubled up the Steelers?
Well, I don't think it's surprising when the Ravens beat up on somebody when Derrick Henry has a huge game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's a surprise at all. In fact, what surprises me now is that when they don't run Derrick Henry very much and they lose, that the coaching staff doesn't get it adjusted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But when Derrick Henry has a big game, it is not surprising that they beat everybody. That's pretty much where I am with that. Their defense had a pick 6. They had 3 sacks. Derrick Henry had 162 yards rushing. He had 6.8 yards a carry.
Mm-hmm.
So he's having one of those games. You can't really stop the Ravens when they're running like that because that opens up Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers. They both had nice games. It takes a lot of pressure off Lamar. And the
This
defense
was
came up
another
big. But
game.
if you look at all the statistical categories, the Ravens dominated everywhere.
This is
Time
another
of
game
possession,
without.
third downs, first downs,
Yeah, that's right.
everything.
It's another game without George Pickens, and I noticed that very similar to AJ Brown for the Eagles, the Steelers are not the same team without George Pickens. They're just
No.
not. They look very ineffective. Russell looked like he didn't have anywhere to go all day, and it took some of those sacks. He probably could have gotten the ball away, but they just without George Pickens, they're just not the same offense. and it's kind
Agreed.
of amazing to watch them. The last 2 weeks they were sitting at 10-3. Now they've dropped 2 straight, and you're kind of wondering if they don't get him back, what kind of team are they going to be going into the playoffs?
I think the Steelers' defense, the strength of that defense is against the run, and when they're giving up 6.8 yards a carry, that's gonna be a long day for the Steelers.
That's right. There were huge holes for the Ravens. It wasn't just Derrick Henry. It was Lamar Jackson. It was the backup running back. They were doing inside handoffs to the fullback. Everybody was eating against that Steelers defense. I don't know why, but they just had a lot of success running the ball. It was pretty interesting to watch. So I think Ravens are one of those inconsistent teams. One week they lose, next week they blow out the Steelers. I don't know. I just don't understand the Ravens at all. I don't know why they can't get any consistency going, but obviously they're a very dangerous team if they play like this.
It really comes down to Derrick Henry, in my opinion, because when they ask Lamar to do too much, that's when they get beaten.
So next game, surprising, the Falcons had dropped several in a row, and they had been so bad a couple weeks in a row that they got their quarterback benched, and in comes Michael Penix Jr. for his rookie first start. Plays the worst team in football in the Giants and absolutely torches them. The Falcons defense gets 2 pick sixes. Penix plays a very efficient game. They run the ball well. Anything you can take away from this first start for Michael Penix Jr.?
Well, he looked very poised. He looked good out there. I think holding him out has given him time to learn and not get overwhelmed. I'm not going to say he lit it on fire, but he looked steady and ready. And that's tremendous for a rookie. I think they did him a very good service by having him on the bench this long. But Penix looked good. But really, it came down to they gave the ball to Bijan Robinson a lot. Bijan had 22 carries for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's smart. Do that for your rookie quarterback. Get that ball running. And the Falcons kind of dominated in most every statistical category. Third down conversions, 8 of 14. That's a very good ratio. And time of possession, Atlanta dominated. First downs, Atlanta dominated 22-14. So they got Darnell Mooney, who's having an unbelievable season, involved, 82 yards.
So they were.
Didn't you have Koo, the kicker for Atlanta?
Yes.
He got hurt?
He got hurt. Yep.
He got hurt. The backup kicker, Riley Patterson, was 2 for 3 on field goals and 4 for 4 extra points. So their backup kicker came through decently. And just
it was unfortunate because I had Koo in both of my fantasy leagues this week and didn't realize he was hurt and got 0 points in both leagues. So that was.
Oh, and I have to mention 2 pick sixes.
Yeah, 2 pick sixes.
2 pick sixes. That's gonna really, really swing momentum in your favor for a good amount of time.
So interestingly enough, there were several ex-Giants who came out after the game with very blistering tweets. One of them was Lawrence Taylor, who said essentially, you need to get rid of everyone. Of course, I don't think they want to get rid of their rookie wide receiver who's really good.
No, Neighbors had a great game. He's having an unbelievable season, but he's about the only one that you keep on offense.
Yeah, there's a good point Lawrence Taylor makes here, and that is that who is salvageable? I mean, the coaching staff's got to go.
A couple of the linemen.
You've already gotten rid of your quarterback. You don't have much on offense. The defense is pretty trash. And I don't know.
You need to trade down and get picks. You need number of picks, not so much high quality single picks, but you need to trade your first round pick for a first and a second.
You're kind of starting over. Let's be honest. They're going to be the number 1 pick.
Total rebuild.
Total rebuild. That's right. So next one was Lions dismantle the Bears. And actually, Caleb played pretty decent in this game, and they still got dismantled. That's how much better the Lions offense is than the Bears. And Bears defense also is not very good. I was amazed watching the highlights from this game. Some of the passes that Goff had that he totally uncorked down the field. He had one that was 65 yards in the air to Jamison Williams. It was one of the prettiest throws of the entire season. I mean, Lions can beat you in so many different ways. It's really astounding.
Yeah. Williams had on that play so much speed. I would love to hear what his miles per hour was. He absolutely ran right through those defenders. It
But
was
Rob, he
great.
didn't even underthrow him. Like it was
It was
65 yards
perfect.
in the air.
Yeah, it was a perfect strike.
Yeah. So
But for me, the coolest play was the stumble bum trick.
yeah, that was cool. That
This was
very
so cool. Where they had watched the Packers, where Jordan Love fumbles the snap, picks it up, is supposed to hand the ball off, and it's a broken play. And he looks up and sees his tight end open, throws it to him. So Ben Johnson comes to Goff earlier in the week and says, do you think you could accidentally fumble the ball on purpose? I mean, pick it back up and make this play work. And Goff said, I don't think so. I don't think so. He said, all right, make it look like you're going to fumble it somehow. And it really came down to Jahmyr Gibbs doing the dive, really sold the play.
Mm-hmm.
He made it look like he tripped. Because if you look at the replay, Gibbs pops back up and gets involved in the blocking, which is really good.
Mm-hmm.
So they execute it perfectly. It's so Dan Campbell. They pretend like the quarterback's stumbling and trying to hand the ball off. The running back falls to the ground, makes it look like he's tripped. He pops back up to block. Goff gathers the ball, never loses it, but makes it look like he's fumbling. And then Laporta is running free, and it's a beautiful touchdown.
Which he probably would be running free anyway, but this gave him even more room on the play. Yeah. You know what's amazing? Yeah. This was one of the most epically executed trick plays of the entire season. It was so much fun to watch. Do you think
way that the quarterback, Goff and Gibbs, sold it so well that you couldn't even feel bad for the defender? I mean, they didn't have a chance.
Ben McDonald was already rumored that he's going to get a job in the offseason, right? I mean, he's one of the hottest coordinators right now. Do you think that play maybe just got him a job? No,
I think he already has it. That play just is already proof pudding that, they already, everyone's watching him already.
Mm-hmm. He interviewed for the Panther job last year when they went with Canales. But
really?
Yeah. He's been close. So I think he's going to get one now.
Yeah.
Feeling pretty good about that. That was a great game, though. I mean, Lions are just rolling again. Browns go down to the Bengals. They looked completely hapless. It was embarrassing. The Bengals even had a bunch of turnovers in this game, but still came out on top 24-6. Anything you can take away from this one?
Joe Burrow. I mean, I've been saying it. I think he's the best quarterback in football. And the Browns are pretty hapless.
And the Bengals really didn't play their best this game, and they really were kind of sloppy. Yeah.
But the Bengals D came up big this one. They had 5 sacks, 2 INTs, and a fumble recovery. Did you see? And Chase Brown had a nice game, 91 yards. Jamar Chase had 97 yards. So their stars did what they're supposed to do. Their skill position players came up. Did you see Burrow's throw where he was
literally
to the ground? He was parallel to the ground.
It looked like his knee hit the ground before he threw it, but it didn't. It was 1 inch off the ground.
No, it didn't. He was parallel to the ground. And he flings it into the end zone, and Jamar Chase catches it. Or no, T. Higgins catches it, and it's a touchdown.
Incredible.
And that was a wild play.
One of the craziest throws of the year. He was 1 inch off the ground.
Yeah,
incredible play.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was awesome. What do you think of this stat the Bengals have 2-5 at home? Like, that just shouldn't happen for a team that's a playoff contender.
I think a lot of those losses happened early, and a lot of them were close.
Yeah.
The Bengals were on a roll where they were losing 48-45 and stuff like that. Their defense was so bad that they couldn't beat anybody.
Yeah. I just don't think that should ever happen. You got to defend your house,
Yeah. Yeah, you got to defend your house.
Yeah. So next one, we got the Colts beat up on the Titans. This was actually a really high-scoring game. Richardson kind of had his comeback game after having a really poor game the week before. But really, to me, the story in this game was Jonathan Taylor. He was absolutely unbelievable in this game. Every time they handed him the ball, he was electric. Even his 15-yard runs were just incredible. He felt like he could break it every time he touched it.
Yeah, he looked like Genty.
He had 2 really long touchdowns. We've always known he's one of the top 5 backs in football, but boy, did he look like it this game. Any
He was
thoughts
amazing.
about this game?
Taylor was amazing. 218 yards, 3 touchdowns. One of them was a 70-yard run, and he looked so fast in that. It was awesome.
He was
He
going
was
away.
clearly a man possessed after last week dropping the ball on the 1-yard line and because they lost.
You think that's what it was? You think
I think he was very focused and motivated to show that he's not a buffoon and an idiot and all the things that he was getting bashed for online. And he was just very embarrassed, I think. And I think he, the Titans are a dumpster fire. And I mean, they couldn't do anything defensively.
Well, let me tell you, if the Colts ever want to get rid of him, we Panther fans, we're fine taking him. Because, man,
You never know.
He is super good.
But I thought that the Colts offense looked pretty balanced, pretty good. I mean, Josh Downs and a couple of these guys had some nice receiving days. Richardson had a reasonable day. He only had 131 yards throwing, but he did have a touchdown and a pick. But he had 70 yards rushing and a touchdown.
He had a lot of nice
runs. He's a dual threat, like Jalen Hurts kind of. He's sort of in that.
I wonder if at some point if they're going to just move him to running back. I mean, he basically looks like a running back.
It's going to be like Jalen Hurts, I think, but not as good. But he can throw, but he's really going to run the ball more, and they're just going to be okay with that.
You know who had a pretty good game in this game was Mason Rudolph for the Titans. He had a couple of really nice throws.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty.
But he had 3 picks, so that's a problem.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Calvin Ridley's having a decent season.
Yeah, Ridley had a really nice catch from Mason Rudolph for a touchdown. That was nice to watch. So this game was really strange. This 19-9 win by the Rams. This game was kind of a real tight one for most of the game. Defenses slugging it out. Lots of, turnovers on downs. I think the Jets were 2 for 5 on 4th down. This was the first time in NFL history a team has never punted in the game and not scored at least 10 points for the Jets. So I'm not sure if that's one they should really be proud of. Didn't punt at all, but the reason it was is they kept turning it over on downs over and over. They just kept going for it on 4th down. But finally, the Rams, who we know are the better team, finally break through in the 4th quarter and make a couple big plays and win this game 19-9 and continue their playoff push. What were your thoughts about this one?
I just think that the Jets are way too one-dimensional, considering they have Breece Hall. They can throw the ball pretty effectively, but they definitely threw more than the Rams. 246 yards passing to 110, but rushing it's 132 to 75. They have Breece Hall. They should use him more. It'll give them more of a balanced attack. And this vaunted Jets defense just isn't having a great year. But in this game, they played pretty well.
They did. They did. But this wasn't the defense's problem. No. Aaron Rodgers took a couple sacks he wouldn't have in the past. I think his mobility is really limited now. He took a couple sacks that I just was head scratching when I saw him take them. I was like, wow. Usually he would.
But I will tell you that in years past, you'd never see a Jets team with 0 sacks, and they had 0 sacks here. So they had some hurries, but not sacks, and therefore.
And then the one time that he got sacked where it really was inexcusable, he was running around inside the pocket, and then he gets blindsided and the ball squirts out and he gives up a fumble. And I don't know. He's making plays that are great, but he's also making a lot of plays that you're not used to seeing him make when he was with Green Bay.
Yep.
And I don't know. I think the Jets are going to have to look in a different direction next year. That's just my personal opinion.
I think they're in rebuild mode.
Yeah, both New York teams. Some of the worst teams in football.
Yeah, because that defense isn't that vaunted.
So let me just say, this is the first game I want to highlight that we never get this opportunity ever within our family to have all of the teams we like win in the same weekend. But this was the first one to talk about. Commanders and Eagles was one of those epic games, back and forth, 2 playoff teams going at it. This was at Washington. Jaden Daniels with 5 touchdowns, and he just tore up this number 1 defense in the NFL. I will mention that Jalen Hurts got hurt at the end of the first quarter, and so Kenny Pickett had to play the rest of the way. But he actually played pretty well. He had a couple touchdown passes.
He played a nice game.
So what do you think of this? game. What do you think of Jaden Daniels, all of his weapons, the running game? Defense made a couple big stops. They just found a way to
Defense
get it
played
done.
great for Washington. 4 sacks,
Mm.
an interception, and a fumble recovery.
Yeah, that's right.
That's great.
And they get it done with 10 seconds left with a real nice pass. They had a real nice touchdown to Scary Terry. Jamison Crowder makes the winning catch. What are your thoughts about this game? And is this a possible view into what the Commanders can be in the playoffs?
I think they needed a last second to win this, so there's been a little too much Eagles demise talk that I've heard. They're playing with their backup quarterback, and they almost win on the road. That's pretty good stuff, if you ask me.
Well, and the Commanders had 4
Commanders are a
turnovers.
serious team. 9-5 is their record. So, actually, it's 10-5 now.
Yeah.
The Commanders are a serious team. It's on the road, and the Eagles almost pulled it off. So, you know.
But how did
with
the
a backup
Eagles lose this
quarterback.
game? How did the Eagles lose this game when they got 4 turnovers from the Commanders? I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. If you're the Eagles, you're kicking yourself because you could have won this pretty easily. But the fact that you've almost won on the road against a really good team and your quarterback goes down is something to celebrate. I think that the 22 points in the fourth quarter is very upsetting if you're an Eagles fan because your defense is better than that. But
if you think about it, the Commanders, if they, let's say 2 of those turnovers were not turnovers, I mean, Commanders probably would have had 50 points in this game. So what does that say about the Eagles defense? The Eagles defense wasn't hurt. Jalen Hurts was hurt, but Eagles defense was
the Eagles defense got two picks and 3 fumbles.
Right.
That's pretty good. I mean,
I know.
I will say
they gave up a lot of points. Right.
Had a real nice game, 5 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And how about our boy Olamide Zaccheaus?
I saw that. Broke 2 tackles on the way to the end zone.
He looked awesome.
Zaccheaus, yeah, I was really
70 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was sweet.
Very nice to see that.
That one TD was really nice when he broke 2 tackles to get there.
Yeah, he shed a bunch of tacklers and yeah.
He's having a nice season.
It was a heavyweight bout,
Yeah,
and it was. Eagles losing their quarterback could have been the difference.
Well, Commanders fans are pumped because we knew this, Robbie.
It's not that Kenny Pickett lost them the game, but I think it's difficult to say what the game would have played out if Hurts was healthy.
True. That's true. I still think the Eagles are the best team in the NFC right now because they're the healthiest. But we'll see with Hurts' health what happens there because obviously they're not going to win.
Concussion, so he'll be back in a few weeks, I imagine.
Yep. We'll see what happens. Very excited for Commanders fans. Really happy that we took Jaden Daniels. You remember when we had our draft special, I was very much hoping they would take him and not take someone else. And they did. And obviously he's the best of the rookie quarterback class this year. So I'm pretty excited about it. So next game, I'm equally excited about. I got my Panthers shirt on, as you can see here. Super pumped at the way the Panthers have been playing. They had won 2 in a row, then they lost 3 in a row. They were all really close games against playoff teams. Really, they should have won a couple of those games, and they lost them in disappointing fashion. Finally get this one done against a desperate Cardinals team that had to have a win to try to make the playoffs, and the Panthers knocked them out of playoff contention in this game. Everyone came to bear here. Defense had some nice plays. The offense really rolled it up. Chuba Hubbard was kind of dominating. Definitely was the best back in this game. Bryce Young continues his progression. Coaching made some really nice calls at the end of the game. What were your thoughts about this one?
I think the Panthers have the blueprint now. They just need to get a little bit better players, a little better roster, and a little more experience. They ran the ball well. Chuba Hubbard is an outstanding back. He's had a great season. Bryce Young had a really great game. The defense came up huge. It was 3 sacks, an interception, and a fumble. So they kind of harassed Kyler Murray a bit, and they got the win. A lot of positives coming out of this game.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about these people that say, the Panthers shouldn't have won, they should be tanking? Are you in that
No,
camp? Are
never.
you in the camp that I'm in, where I just don't believe in that? I don't care if they go from fifth pick down to seventh or eighth pick. I want to try to win games because to me, it sets up a culture for Canales to build for next year. I'm just a
Yeah.
huge believer in that. I want
As soon as
them to
you
win as
start
many
losing,
games
it
as they can.
becomes your culture really, really easily, and you don't want to lose on purpose ever.
Like they were saying, the Falcons, or not the Falcons, they were saying the Raiders, they should be tanking, they should be losing. Why are they trying to win? All these teams that are trying to win, I just completely disagree with it. I'm all on board. I'd rather the Panthers win out, and we'll take the draft pick how we get it. I mean, Cowboys
Yeah,
the
that's
same
right.
way. A lot of Cowboys fans apparently are upset that they won. I'm like, I just don't understand that. All because you want a draft pick,
I've
that you
always
don't.
heard that you can tell a lot from a team's last 6 games how they're going to do next year.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to finish strong so you can set up next year and have real good film on what you have on your roster. And it helps you define more readily what changes need to be made.
I think Panthers fans should feel encouraged. I mean, they're playing the best
Yeah.
teams in the league, either to 3-point loss or 3-point wins. They're
Yeah, I
right there.
agree.
Yeah.
They're playing great. They're playing competitively. Let's put it that way. They weren't competitive at the beginning of the season. Now they are. They've come a long way. They're one of the more improved teams, and their young quarterback is gaining confidence every week.
Mm-hmm.
And the smartest thing they ever did was bench him
Mm-hmm.
and not talk at all about trading him, just letting him learn.
As a matter of
And it
fact, he said at the time, he's still our quarterback. We just think that right now he doesn't give us the best chance to win, but he's still our quarterback. So you found a way to thread that needle,
Yeah. I wouldn't be stunned if Atlanta goes back to Kirk Cousins.
We'll see. Next game, Vikings take care of Seahawks on a really unbelievable play by Darnold at the end of the game. He makes a throw off his front foot, kind of falling over as he's getting tackled. The ball goes up in the air over 2 defenders, right to Justin Jefferson to win the game. It was really an incredible throw. And it's one that I don't think a lot of quarterbacks can make, but he just has incredible arm strength right now. Plays a really solid Seahawks team that's very good this year. Looks like they're going to make the playoffs too. But Vikings, a lot of people are saying now after watching the last couple of weeks that they are Super Bowl contenders. And I think to think that they're anything different is just not looking at the evidence in front of your eyes. So thoughts about this win by the Vikings?
I think the Vikings D is outstanding. And I've been really impressed with Darnold this year. They don't make that many mistakes. So they keep it close. And they have the second best receiver in football this year. So
And
it's
by the way, Aaron
tough.
Jones is running the ball. They can run the ball too.
Yeah, they haven't run as effectively as I think they should have. Otherwise, I think their record would be even better. But I think that Aaron Jones running the ball potential is there. And I don't think he's having the best season, but I think he is a great back, and he could easily turn it on going into playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. I'm just more and more impressed by the Vikings every week. They play better and better competition. They still win. So sitting at 13-2, they're the number 1 seed right now, incredibly. So we'll see how they close it out. This game was really strange. The Bills end up pulling it out in the fourth quarter. The Patriots gave them a hell of a run the entire day. The Bills actually looked like they were dead in the second quarter, down 14-0, and then James Cook rips off a really long touchdown run and kind of gave them a little bit of momentum. They find a way to get this game done, but definitely was not the Bills' best game offensively.
No.
But again, the good teams find a way to win, right?
So I heard some commentary on this today, talking about how they're very concerned with the Bills because they are winning different ways, which is a good sign, but they're not putting together entire team efforts. So some weeks the defense plays really well, but the offense doesn't. Some other weeks the offense is on fire and the defense is terrible. They're not having all 3 phases playing complementary football. And the person I heard, the commentator, talked about how they think they're going to go out early in the playoffs unless they change that. So that's something to keep in mind. I will say Allen did not have a very good game. He had a QBR of 28, which is horrendous.
Yeah, he was not good.
He wasn't good. Ran the ball for 30 yards. He had a touchdown and a pick, 154 yards. So not a great game for him. James Cook did have a great game. He had 100 yards rushing and a touchdown and 26 yards receiving and a touchdown. So he was their offense. And the defense for Buffalo came to play, and they did great. They did a scoop and score, and 2 fumble recoveries and a pick and a sack. So they were kind of harassing.
I do think if the Bills played a playoff team in that game, they probably would have lost. I think
they would have lost that one if they played like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree so. So, but hey, their defense picked them up, and that's all you care about. You get the W in the NFL. Next one, we got Raiders win 19-14. Again, all these Raider fans online were saying, why did we win? Why did we win? I'm just not in that camp. I'm in the camp you win as many as you can. They win this in walk-off fashion in the fourth quarter. This was kind of a battle of the draft pick battlers. But really nice to see the Raiders get off the schneid. And again, with all of our teams winning, Panthers, Commanders, Raiders, it was nice to see, especially for Henry. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it was really nice to see the Raiders. I was thinking about it. Is there a team that's worse than the Jaguars?
I think the Giants are, me personally.
I think they're about the same. I think the Jaguars could be
the
worst.
Mac Jones to Brian Thomas Jr., that combination, they had a touchdown in this game.
Brian Thomas is good. He
just
really
went over 1,000 yards as a rookie.
Yeah. He's having an unbelievable season. But that's all they have.
Yeah.
Etienne's getting, 30 yards a game. It's just not good enough. Like, it's not – I don't know if it's the offensive line that's terrible.
Raiders are much better than their 3-12 record. They just don't have a quarterback.
Yes. The Raiders have more talent on the roster than the Jaguars do. They should win this game.
No, I agree. I agree with that. They need a quarterback so badly, the Raiders, and they need a couple other pieces too. They probably need a lineman on both sides of the ball. They need another running back. They need a number
wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need quite a few things. They need probably another corner. So this draft coming up for them is really important.
Yep.
I was happy to see them get it done. This next game, of course, was the 4th team of all of our favorites that won this weekend. I don't know if this will ever happen again where all 4 of our teams win, but the Dolphins took care of business, beat up on the 49ers in Miami, get it done. And Brock Purdy had a really pedestrian game. Now people are calling for he shouldn't get paid. Maybe we need to look in a different direction. I'm not sure about all that, but Dolphins really played a nice game in this one. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty nice win. Deebo Samuel played well for San Fran, and Kittle had a nice game, but they were just they just look like a shell of themselves.
They do.
I'm not really sure, but definitely Tua had a nice game, 22 of 34. Devon Achane had 120 yards rushing and a touchdown, 70 yards receiving.
He was incredible in this game. He was incredible.
Yeah, 50-yard touchdown catch. So Achane is awesome. There's no excuse for not getting him the ball a lot. And after the game, they asked Tyreek why he only had a handful of catches. And he said that he's been taking the veteran Wednesdays off, and he really needs those reps with Tua. So that was an interesting admission from him that, we really need to be practicing. And McDaniel said, you know what, we're going to keep adjusting, and it sounds like they need that practice, so they're going to get it. And we'll just keep tweaking this thing. But the surprise for me was the defense. The defense played pretty well. 3 sacks.
The defense played well, which was surprising because they haven't played well most of the year. But the other thing is, what is wrong with the 49ers defense? Like, it's just not the same defense. They're not getting the pressure they used to get. Their linebackers aren't playing. Of course, they're pretty banged up, but the corners look like they're out of place a lot of times.
Greenlaw got hurt again. They're getting old, and their great players are hurt, and their backups aren't very good. So they're just a shell of themselves.
You're not getting the pressure that they used to get. So, I mean, Tua's just sitting there, picking whoever he wants. You're going to get picked apart if you don't get there. So I don't know. I wasn't surprised about this one at all. I think the Dolphins are playing better than the 49ers right now. 49ers found out before the game that they were out of contention for the playoffs. So I don't know. I was excited that all four of our teams won this week. I'm not sure
It
how
was
often
fantastic.
that'll
So
happen.
exciting.
Yeah, great stuff.
I
Go
can't remember
Dolphins.
the last time that happened, to be honest.
All right, so last game of the night last night was the Cowboys beat the Buccaneers. I didn't really see this one coming. The Buccaneers really needed this one badly. If they were to lose this one, they cede control of that division back over to the Falcons. And they ended up losing the game, which was really surprising. Like I said, the Cowboys got a huge lead in this one and held on tight, and Buccaneers couldn't come all the way back in the fourth quarter. Not sure exactly what to make of the Buccaneers. They're kind of one of those teams I've talked about that are real inconsistent, up and down every week. Cowboys had nothing to play for. They were eliminated from the playoffs with the Commanders win. What were your thoughts about this inexplicable loss by the Bucs?
Well, kudos to Dallas. They got eliminated earlier in the day, and they knew it. So they went out there and just fought hard, and I respect that. I think they're playing for Mike McCarthy's job. They like him. They want to save his job. Their defense played pretty well. 4 sacks, a pick, and a fumble recovery. And that fumble recovery, that was the most unusual way to lose a game I can remember. They almost got Baker. He slips out, flips the ball to White, who takes the ball, and he's running forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets tackled by Bland, is that his name? And the Cowboy rips the ball out as they're falling to the ground and just takes the ball away from him. And that was an incredible way to lose. I mean, it was the wildest play.
It was. It really was.
Aubrey, 4 for 4 on field goals, 2 for 2 in extra points. You can't say enough about that.
And you know what? Cooper Rush, I think, is playing better than Dak did the entire season. I think Cooper Rush is the best quarterback on that roster. And I know that's a big statement, but I really believe that. The way he's throwing the ball.
I will say, though, that Tampa didn't protect the ball well because they dominated a lot of offensive statistical categories and still lost. And the reason was because they gave the ball away a few times. So,
well, the Cowboys defense stepped up, though. They played actually really well.
Yeah, they played hard.
So I don't know. This was a surprising loss. Buccaneers really had to have this one. Now they need help to get into the playoffs. They're going to be praying for a bunch of different things to happen on the rest of the people in their division, and especially the Falcons. So I don't know. Last week I had written the Falcons off, but now all of a sudden they're in plum position again. So we'll see what happens. So the playoff picture after week 16, this is what it looks like. The only change from last week is Falcons going to the number 4 seed in the NFC instead of the Buccaneers. Literally nothing else changes. And you can see the Bengals have the wildest path to the playoffs, which is incredibly unlikely. It's like a 1 in a million chance. They've got to win out. They need the Colts to lose. They need Broncos to lose their final 2 games, and they need the Dolphins to lose. So you talk about needing help. The Bengals need the most help of everybody. So any thoughts about this overall bracket? Kind of stayed the same except for the Falcons.
It looks right to me. Those are the best teams.
Yeah. I think so too. I think the number 1 seed may change in the NFC with Detroit and the Vikings being tied right now. You may see.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the order change a little bit, but
Vikings may pop in there. Eagles may pop in there. So yeah, that number 1 seed's up for grabs, I think. This is exciting. All right, Robbie, let's go to your news and mailbag segment for the week.
All right. So that's just a silly picture, but it's not as crazy as usual. We got a couple headlines. Jets are interested in Mike Greenberg as general manager. So that's wild.
Okay.
General manager.
Yeah.
Ricky Henderson passed this week. I think it's worthwhile mentioning Ricky Henderson passed on the December 20th, which was 3 days ago.
Truly a great player.
He was known as the Man of Steel. He was known as the greatest leadoff hitter in history. in Major League Baseball history. And he owns a bunch of records: stolen bases, runs, unintentional walks, leadoff home runs. In 2009, he was elected to the Hall of Fame. And he was just an incredible. He had so much swagger, and he was incredible to watch. He had a bunch of different teams, 9 different teams from 1979 to 2003. And in that time, he went back to the A's 4 different times. So he's thought of synonymously, really, with the Oakland A's.
He was the greatest leadoff hitter in baseball history. There's no
Yep.
question about it. I remember when he was in his prime, it was automatic that he was going to take second. Like, you weren't going to stop it.
And usually third.
And usually third.
Yeah.
So,
And I heard statistically, they were comparing him to modern day base stealers, and there's no comparison. It's not even close. Ellie De La Cruz, who's one of the best, probably the best of the modern era, his stats are a fraction of what Ricky used to do. So
no question.
it's just an incredible athlete, and just a vicious player. He had only one speed, and it was fast. So he was, great guy.
Nice.
Jordan Love, there's been I don't know if you've heard about the Toyota-thon conspiracy.
No.
Fans came out saying that Jordan Love's numbers go up dramatically when the Toyota-thon starts in mid-November and goes through January. So it's this whole thing now. He's wearing like Toyota-thon sweaters, and it is kind of remarkable. This year, he's 4-1 since mid-November, and he has 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. So there's something to that mid-November. He just improves. And of course, they're blaming it, or they're attributing it to the Toyota-thon marathon to sell cars. But they're not related, but it's kind of funny how they're making it a thing.
That's funny.
So I don't know if you saw Tank Dell for the Texans tore his ACL and dislocated his kneecap.
I did see that. And actually, that's one reason. Another reason I think they're 1 and done, because he is huge on that team.
Yeah,
he's their AJ Brown.
AJ Stroud was crying. Like, it was kind of a rough scene. That's a bad headline for the Texans.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's do the mailbag.
All right, let's do it.
This episode was a perfect mix of facts and fun at Mateo. These 3 are from our playoff preview from last week.
Oh, that's great.
The college playoff preview. Perfect mix of facts and fun. What do you think about that?
Hey, thanks, Mateo. Yeah, thanks so much for that comment, and we want to keep it coming for you, so appreciate it.
This episode got me even more excited for the playoffs at Christopher.
Oh, thanks, Christopher. That's awesome. And yeah, we are so pumped. Obviously, first round and now into the second round. It's going to be really fun to watch it progress.
Yeah, we can nitpick that seeding's not perfect, or this game wasn't as close as we wanted, but it's great football. Like, it's really good stuff. And these teams have played amazing seasons, so it's a reward to them,
Right. That's right.
Okay, next one. Great predictions. Can't wait to see how it all plays out at Aaron.
Oh, cool. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we can't wait to see how it plays out too. We're going to play later in the year a little bit of kind of a whole episode of all of our predictions from the season. So that's going to be really fun to watch. So stay tuned.
That reminded me of Luke. At the end of our episode, he said, "You get to go back and watch and see how right I was."
That's right. Yeah, I like that.
He's
right,
so confident.
He's 4 for 4 so far. So are you.
What's that?
You guys are both 4 for 4, so we'll see.
Yeah. It didn't take a genius to see the trend line there. Last one. You guys are always bringing something new and exciting. Great work at Cooper. This was about our Tommy DiCarlo interview. And we're always trying to get fresh content, new ideas, things we care about, and hopefully you do too. And good interviews. We're going to try and get more and more interviews. We have a bunch lined up with really cool celebrities and athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And of course, musicians. So Tommy DiCarlo from Boston was a very interesting interview. Very interesting man, living the American dream. What were your thoughts overall on that episode, Tom?
Thanks, Cooper. Yeah, we love that episode, obviously. Really appreciative that Tommy came on the show. Obviously, it's almost 40,000 views at this point, and so really happy you enjoyed it. And we do try to bring you some non-sports episodes sometimes and try to mix them in so that things really stay interesting for you guys. So thanks for the comment.
And that's the mailbag.
All right, fantastic. Well, Robbie, last comments heading out of kind of weekend one into weekend two in the bowl season and CFB season?
I think I'm going to change the way I look at some of those games. Weren't maybe as exciting as we had hoped, but not all 12 are going to be. But we're so blessed to have it get more and more of the big time programs moving forward. And it's such an exciting thing they've built here with this 12-team playoff. I'm so excited for it. And the NFL is just cooking. It's getting better and better. So sports is at an all-time high right now, and so much exciting action. And it's real exciting to be able to watch that and bring it to everybody out there.
We've been saying for many years as college football fans, we wanted to see the college football playoff expand because we wanted to see an opportunity for upsets. We wanted to see the Boise States of the world have a chance. And finally they do. In 12-team format, you've got a couple guys in there that wouldn't be there normally. And so we as fans love that. Now, the downside of that is that a lot of times those guys will get blown out. And we saw a little bit of that this weekend. But again, I'm not going to complain one bit. I'm glad they're there. I like the expanded format. I'm not sure I really want it to go beyond this. Some people are talking 16 teams. I think it's too much. I think that'll water it down too much. But I like it right at 12. I think it's a great tournament and really happy with it.
It's funny. I said they should have jumped from 4-team to 8-team and see how that goes. Mm-hmm. I still think that might be the right call.
Yeah, because then you start at this weekend we're coming up on.
Yeah.
We have 8 teams left.
Yep.
Yeah. So we'll see.
And then your NIT tournament or whatever you call it, you could set up a tournament outside the top 8, might have better teams in it.
Maybe give away a little smaller trophy, call it the NIT trophy or something.
Yeah. I don't care what you call it, but it'd be like the NIT. So anyway.
No, I like it.
That's it.
What about NFL? It's really heating up now. We're heading into our last 2 weeks. Any big
Love
things?
It. There's a few teams on the bubble for playoffs. That's super exciting. They got a lot to play for, a lot to fight for. Some teams are sort of struggling, even though they're good teams. Little injuries are impacting some teams. So
even your Dolphins have a very slim chance. They said Dolphins have, I think it's a 3% chance or something. You've got to have like
so
all these.
Saying there's a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to have like 5 or 6 different things happen, which of course incredibly unlikely, but they got a chance.
Hey, until it's over, keep going.
It starts with winning the next 2 weeks. They just have to win both and then just hope and pray. So
yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this week and for the entire year 2024. Have a Merry Christmas and a great time with your families. And thank you so much for tuning in all season and joining me and Rob on this great journey. And we will see you guys in 2025.
I just want to say Merry Christmas to everybody. Have a happy new year. Whatever you celebrate, Festivus for the rest of us. Feel free to drop your grievances in the bottom comments section.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear your grievances. And we are certainly happy that our family's getting together. I hope everyone out there is going to also get to see as much of their family as they can. You never know how much time you have with them. So just embrace that time, make the most. We're about to roll some Christmas movies, put on a fireplace, and drink some hot chocolate, and have a great time, and probably play a few board games as well. So
getting better than that.
Have a great holiday, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. And we are having a blast. Hope you are. Have a safe holiday, and we will see you soon.
Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you next year. Have a great one.